So if there is one movie that I want a sequel for, it's The Guest. Released in 2014 on a budget of $5 million, only grossed $2.7 worldwide. An absolute travesty because this movie, in a lot of ways, was ahead of its time. It stars Micah Monroe, who is all the rage right now, Dan Hide Your Girl Stevens as the lead character. He's everywhere right now. At the time, he was mostly known for Downton Abbey, which, by the way, I started watching. I've watched like 6 episodes of it. It's great.
I have to be myself, Mother. I'll be no use to anyone if I can't be myself.
I had the opportunity to catch a screening of this a few weeks back, and I've seen the movie several times, but there was something about watching this with an audience. I think a lot of people hadn't seen it, that kind of refreshed my love for this movie. It was more of a comedy than I realized. Like, people were laughing their ass off, and I kind of forgot like how funny this movie is, especially the dad that always needs a drink. The casting is great in this. Like, the family, you have the dad, Leland Orser, you have Luke, played by Brendan Meyer, Mrs. Peterson, played by Sheila Kelly.
I want to step out into the hall with Luke for a moment, if that's okay.
Oh, certainly.
Micah Monroe's boyfriend in the movie, Chase Williamson, he plays Zeke. And by the way, speaking of underrated, if you've never seen John Dies at the End, released in 2012, I believe, directed by Don Coscarelli from Phantasm, check it out. It's great. Yeah, if you don't know the plot synopsis of the movie, Dan Stevens shows up and is basically there to say like, hey, I served with your son. He wanted me to tell you that he loved you guys. And of course, they're very moved by this, and they invite him into the house. And when they do, people just mysteriously start dying. I mean, the movie's been out for 10 years, so I guess I'll maybe give away some spoilers. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and go check it out. So yeah, once Dan Stevens arrives, he is killing people that sort of are in the way of exposing this secret, which is that he's like this military experiment gone wrong. So it's very Terminator-esque in a total Halloween setting. Like, this was filmed in New Mexico, but they do a great job bringing the Halloween aesthetic into this. Like I said, with this movie being ahead of its time in 2014, there is even a obvious nod to Halloween 3 at the very end of the movie when they're at this Halloween dance where the climax takes place. In 2014, the climate around Halloween 3 was not what it is now. It's now a very beloved movie. There's merchandise everywhere. But at the time, it was a little more rare to see that kind of thing. I mean, not saying that, you know, Halloween 3 has had its fans forever since it was released in 82 to some degree, but it's not what it is now. And if you know me, I am a hardcore fan of the Halloween series, and there is a Halloween 4 nod in this. Very subtle, the way it should be, but you can see the same sort of Halloween 4 decoration on a fence post as seen in the credits for Halloween 4. Beautiful. But yes, the performance by Dan Stevens is spot on. It's perfect. He plays his character flawlessly.
Get him out of here.
This sort of Terminator-like guy, but very charismatic and cool as shit. You can't help but root for him, even when he's like tossing grenades into a restaurant full of people. You're just like, this dude's so cool. Anybody that's seen this movie, the hallway scene, the sexual tension is off the charts, okay? Like, Micah Monroe, Dan Stevens. I looked over at my girlfriend during that scene in the theater, and she was nearly biting her bottom lip off. I was like, all right, settle down. But yeah, I get it. But yeah, this movie is just a lot of fun, and it is a total shame that it flopped at the box office. But had this movie come out today with Dan Stevens where he's at and Micah Monroe and this sort of kind of throwback appreciation style, I feel like it would be massive now. And it has since garnered a cult-like status. If you're watching this video, I'm sure you love the movie. And by the way, welcome to the channel. Subscribe if you got a second. Thumbs up the video. Anyways, yeah, had it been released today, I think it would have done very well. Also, the soundtrack, total banger. If you're into synthwave, by the way, ahead of its time. I mean, synthwave, I feel like it kind of popped off in like 2015, 2016. I listen to a ton of synthwave these days, especially when I run. I don't know, maybe I just don't know, but it seems like it was sort of underground at the time. But the soundtrack to this is killer. In April of 2022, Adam Winguard compiled a soundtrack for The Guest 2, and the track titles almost tell like a sequel to The Guest. Adam Winguard and Dan Stevens have both expressed interest in doing a sequel to The Guest. So my question is, why haven't you done it? I mean, it seems like you want to make this movie, so let's do it. I mean, it's got a serious fan base now, like Dan Stevens can't miss. Micah Monroe is a huge star, like coming off of Long Legs. I'd be curious to see what she would say. Like if anybody's asked her, hey, would you be interested in doing a sequel to The Guest? Because it was set up perfectly for a sequel. I love the ending of the movie. Won't give it away here, but
What the fuck?
But that brings me to my next topic, because funny enough, a couple days after I saw this movie, the news came out that Dan Stevens is reteaming with Adam Winguard in a gonzo action horror thriller. It's going to be an A24 film, and right away I was like, holy shit, this sounds amazing. It's going to star Adria Arjona, who was also in Hitman. So far, the only plot details are as follows. Arjona is starring as a mother who falls back on a particular set of skills in order to protect her loved ones after she runs afoul of a threat that has escaped a secret military base. Alex Pahea, we'll talk about him in a second, will play a character called the Butcher and bring his set of skills, including anaconda chokes and roundhouse kicks, to his meaty role. Everything about that sounds incredible, especially that Alex Pahea, Poetan, is gonna star in an A24 movie as a villain. Not a lot of people know this about me, but I've been an MMA fan since the 90s, like renting them on VHS tapes, and it's the only sport I follow, and this guy is one of my favorite fighters, and every time he fights, when he's doing his intense stare downs across the octagon, I just have this thought of, holy shit, I would hate to fight this guy. He's the only fighter that scares the shit out of me. So yeah, this is perfect casting. Alex Pahea, Dan Stevens, Adam Winguard, A24, like sign me the fuck up. I am so excited for this movie. But at the same time, why not? I'd be a little more excited if this were the sequel to The Guest. And here's just my off the top plot idea. Terminator 2 this shit. Since Dan Stevens is a military experiment, have him maybe undergo another experiment, and he's like the good guy this time, and he has to fight Alex Pahea. But regardless, if it's a sequel to The Guest, I'm still incredibly stoked for this movie. So yeah, that's all I have to say about my hopes and dreams of a sequel to The Guest. What do you think of the movie? Let me know in the comments. What would you like to see in a sequel to The Guest? Or do you even want to see a sequel? So that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time.